There are places in this world designed to dazzle you, places built to steal your breath before they steal your money. Marble floors polished to perfection, lights that shimmer like stars, hypnotizing you into forgetting how quickly fortunes disappear. And in the heart of this illusion sat a man who didn't belong. Dwayne Johnson wasn't your average high roller. At 53, he carried a quiet power, the kind that comes from decades of living with discipline, risk, and principle. He didn't come to win big. He came to test something far more dangerous than luck, his instincts. And on this particular night, those instincts were screaming. The casino floor buzzed with artificial joy, laughter, clinking glasses, the mechanical rhythm of spinning slots. But at the high-stakes blackjack table, the air was different, thicker, still, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Dwayne sat there, calm, collected, methodical. His eyes never flinched, his hands never trembled. Every card he played felt like it had been written into fate. Chips stacked in front of him like a small fortress, winnings earned not through luck, but precision. A strategy honed over years. He wasn't showing off. He wasn't reckless. He was in control. And that's when the shift came, not a loud one, not at first. It began with glances, too synchronized to be accidental. The pit boss, watching a little too intently. The dealer hesitating before the shuffle. The security guards repositioning ever so slightly. To most, it would seem like business as usual. But Dwayne wasn't most people. Then, a shadow fell over. The table. Two large security guards emerged from the crowd, followed by a man with a smirk sharper than any blade. He wore a tailored suit, a badge of power in this glittering battlefield. "Sir," he announced, loud enough for every curious onlooker to hear, "we have reason to believe you've been cheating." The room froze. Dwayne's eyes narrowed. "Cheating?" he said, calm but firm, like a father scolding a liar. "You're serious?" There was no answer, only force. The guards moved in like wolves, gripping his arms, dragging him back as if he were some common thief. His chips? Confiscated. His dignity publicly stripped. No yelling, no fight. Just the stone-faced silence of a man who knew this wasn't over. And that's when it started, not the game of blackjack, but the real game. One built on deceit, manipulation, and power. Because something about the casino manager's grin didn't scream justice. It whispered conspiracy. Dwayne wasn't angry. Not yet. He was calculating, watching, listening. Because if what just happened to him had happened to others, then this wasn't just an accusation. It was a system, a scam hiding behind velvet ropes and five-star cocktails. A facade built on rigged hands and silenced winners. They thought they'd humiliated him. They thought they'd removed a problem. What they didn't know is that they'd just lit the fuse, and once Dwayne Johnson is in the fight, you better pray the house is ready to burn. You'd think a place built on glamour would be honest about its odds. But that's the illusion. The chandeliers may sparkle, the roulette wheels may spin with hypnotic grace, but in casinos like this, nothing happens by chance. Dwayne Johnson knew that. He wasn't just playing cards. He was reading the room, decoding the rhythm of the floor. And what he saw didn't sit right. That night hadn't started with accusations. It started with curiosity. Dwayne walked in under the radar, just another well-dressed man among dreamers and thrill chasers. No red carpet, no cameras. Just a sleek black jacket and the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything. He didn't care about jackpots or attention. He came for the game, the strategy behind blackjack, where logic could sometimes edge out luck. At first, everything looked typical. The staff smiled. Drinks flowed. Chips clinked. But Dwayne's instincts, the ones sharpened from years in combat, in business, in life, caught flickers most would overlook. The pit bosses didn't just patrol, they hovered, not over losers, but over winners, Eyes tracking, heads nodding subtly at unspoken cues. It wasn't obvious, that was the point. The dealers, too polished. Their motions were smooth, almost rehearsed. And Dwayne noticed something else, something most players missed. The rhythm of the shuffle, the way cards were placed, the near imperceptible tension in the dealer's jaw when Dwayne started stacking. Wins, as if someone somewhere was counting and not liking the math. But Dwayne didn't react, not outwardly. He played on, cool, methodical. He kept his bets steady, his expressions neutral. A winning streak wasn't what he was chasing. He was tracking something deeper, patterns, movements, the choreography of corruption. Then came the pressure. Not direct, not yet. Other players began to fidget. Some stopped making eye contact. The pit boss? Still checking on nearby tables, but Dwayne could feel the man's presence like a weight behind his neck. He wasn't watching the game. He was watching him. Every chip Dwayne won seemed to echo louder than the last. And with every hand, the atmosphere grew tighter, like the room was slowly sealing shut around him. That's when it hit him. He wasn't the player anymore. He was the target, but here's the twist. He expected it, because in places like this, when you win too much, you're not a customer, you're a problem. And problems? They get removed. Dwayne had seen this kind of setup before. Systems that pretend to reward while quietly manipulating. The house didn't just want to win, they needed to win. And if someone like him beat the system would fight back. Hard. By the time his chip stack doubled, the fake smiles were gone. The pit boss looked more like a sentry than a supervisor. The dealer's hands twitched, betraying unease. A quiet conversation here, a subtle signal there. Dwayne's mind raced, not with fear, but calculation. He didn't come here expecting a fair fight, but he also didn't come unprepared, because when the game is rigged against you, you stop playing by their rules. And in that moment, before the confrontation, before the takedown, Dwayne Johnson knew one thing for sure. Whatever was about to happen, it wouldn't be the end. It would be the beginning. The moment it shifted. From subtle to sinister came without warning. But Dwayne felt it coming. You don't survive decades in dangerous circles without learning to sense when the trap is about to spring. And tonight, every movement around the blackjack table whispered the same thing. They were ready to make their move. The table had grown tense, not just from the game, but from something deeper, an orchestration. Dwayne placed his next bet, calm, on the outside, but every sense on high alert. The cards came out slower. The dealer hesitated just a heartbeat too long. The pit boss had stopped pretending to monitor other tables. Now he stood behind the dealer, arms crossed, smiling like a man who already knew the ending. And that's when the words came, almost too polite to be threatening. "Sir," the pit boss said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes, "could you come with us for a moment?" Dwayne didn't flinch. He leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. "I'm in the middle of a game," he replied, voice steady but sharp. "There's been irregularities," the pit boss responded, gesturing vaguely toward the table. "We need to investigate." Irregularities? Dwayne raised an eyebrow, his tone hardening. "I've been playing fair since I sat down." The dealer gave a quick, nervous nod, clearly rehearsed. That was the cue. Within seconds, 2 large security guards flanked Dwayne. Not one word had been shouted, not one rule explained, just force and authority. One of the guards leaned in, voice low, cold. "Sir, we need you to come with us. Now." Around the table, the other players had stopped pretending to ignore the scene. Some stared in awkward silence. Others whispered. A few looked away, afraid of being next. Dwayne didn't resist. That's not who he was. He stood calmly, eyes locked with the pit boss's. "Let me guess," he said, his voice low enough to cut steel. "You think I'm cheating?" The pit boss's smug expression twitched just for a second, but then he recovered. Our systems detected suspicious activity. We're just following protocol." "Suspicious," Dwayne repeated dryly. "Because I'm winning?" The pit boss didn't respond. He signaled the guards, and they led Dwayne through the casino floor. It was a walk of humiliation by design, under the glaring lights, past rows of machines, past the eyes of gamblers, who'd never know the truth, that this wasn't about justice, it was about control. But Dwayne, he wasn't broken. He was documenting everything, mentally noting faces, movements, whispered exchanges. He didn't miss a single detail, because he knew this wasn't random. This was routine. As they passed a hallway near the staff-only area, he heard it, just loud enough to catch. "Another one, huh?" said one guard to the other. "Yeah, just like last week. Confiscate the winnings, blacklist him, move on." Dwayne's eyes narrowed. This wasn't about him. This was about a system, one designed to bleed winners dry and dispose of them before they could speak. A machine that fed off silence, but they'd just picked the wrong man to silence. Inside a sterile security office, Dwayne was shoved into a chair. The pit boss loomed, smug as ever, while an attendant began counting his chips, his winnings, right in front of him. "Mr. Johnson," the pit boss said with mock politeness, "we take cheating very seriously here. If you admit to using any devices, this can go much easier for you." Dwayne stared, unmoved. "I didn't cheat," the pit boss laughed. "They all say that." A search began, his pockets, sleeves, even his shoes. Nothing, of course, but that didn't stop them. "We'll be keeping your winnings," the pit boss declared, stepping back with triumph in his voice. "And as of now, you're banned from the premises." Dwayne clenched his jaw. No argument, no threats. Just quiet fury and a mind already building the next move. As he was escorted out the back exit, past dumpsters and neon shadows, another voice slipped through the night. "Victor's orders," one staff member whispered. "No big winner walks. Out of here with a dime, Victor." So it went deeper. Not just a greedy manager, a system protected by a man with power and reach. Dwayne looked back at the glowing casino sign overhead. Its lights dared him to walk away. He didn't blink. "They think this is over?" he muttered, voice low and dangerous. "They're wrong. They kicked him out. They thought they'd won, but Dwayne Johnson wasn't the kind of man to lick his wounds and disappear. Not when he knew the truth. Not when he saw the entire scam play out with military precision. No, this wasn't about his pride. This was about justice, and he was going to bring the whole operation down from the inside. The next night, the casino floor buzzed just like before. The same hypnotic lights, the same manufactured laughter. But somewhere in the crowd, a man walked with purpose. He wasn't bald anymore. His rugged frame was hidden beneath a tailored suit. A trimmed beard and dark sunglasses completed the transformation. No one looked twice. That's how Dwayne wanted it. This wasn't about playing anymore. This was reconnaissance. He moved through the floor like a shadow, watching the staff, scanning for vulnerabilities. He wasn't looking for chips or jackpots. He was looking for cracks. And that's when he saw her, Mia. She moved gracefully through the tables, balancing drinks and faking smiles. But Dwayne had seen her face the night before. He remembered the flash of guilt in her eyes when the guards dragged him out. She had seen what happened, and she hadn't looked away. He waited for the right moment, then approached casually, slipping her a generous tip as she passed. "Busy night?" he asked, voice warm, disarming. Mia hesitated. "Always is," she replied, trying not to make eye contact. "Especially when high rollers show up." Dwayne leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Funny thing, I was one of them. Until the house decided I was bad for business." Her hands paused. Her eyes flicked toward him. I can't talk about that. Not here." Dwayne nodded, calm and patient. He slid another tip across the tray. "I'm not asking you to risk anything. Just maybe coffee after your shift. I've got a feeling you're not okay with what's happening here." She looked around, scanning for watching eyes. Then, almost imperceptibly, she gave a single nod. Later that night, they sat in a quiet corner of a rundown cafe, just a few blocks from the casino's neon glow. The glamour was gone, the mask was off, and Mia, she finally spoke. "It's all rigged," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything. Especially the high-stakes games, the cards, the roulette wheels, it's all controlled." Dwayne said nothing, letting the silence pressure her to continue. "If someone wins too much, they're marked. Staff starts tracking them. If they don't lose fast enough, the system finds a reason to kick them out, accuse them, ban them. Take their money." He leaned in, his voice low. "Who's behind it?" She didn't answer right away. Her fingers fidgeted with a sugar packet. Then she whispered one word. "Victor, that name again. He runs the whole thing," Mia continued. "The games, the cover-ups. Everyone's scared of him. He's got connections, powerful ones, people who don't ask questions." Dwayne's expression hardened. "I need proof. Can you help me?" She hesitated. "There's a security room. Monitors, files, everything. It's guarded, but if you can get in, that's where you'll find what you need." Dwayne nodded slowly, absorbing every word. It was more than just cheating. It was a machine built to devour people like him, anyone who threatened their bottom line. But now, with Mia's help, he had a way in. A crack in the armor. And when you give a man like Dwayne Johnson a crack, he doesn't back away. He breaks. The whole damn thing open. The plan was simple. Get in, get the proof, get out. But simple plans rarely go as planned, especially when the enemy holds all the cards. Still, Dwayne Johnson wasn't rattled. He'd infiltrated secure compounds, in war zones, a casino with overpriced cocktails and fake smiles. That was just another battlefield. He returned that night, not as a player, but as a ghost. Slipping through crowds, he blended in like smoke. Just another rich face beneath dim lights. But every step had a purpose. He scanned the floor for Mia's signals. She had described everything in detail, the layout, the guards, the cameras. The security room was located in a restricted hallway behind the high-limit poker lounge. 2 guards stood posted at all times, one always on a break rotation. Dwayne waited, patient as a hunter. Timing was everything. When one of the guards finally stepped out for a cigarette, Dwayne moved in. Not with brute force. He didn't need it. He approached the remaining guard casually, slipping a rolled-up wad of cash into his palm like a magician handing off a secret. "Long night?" Dwayne asked, his voice casual, confident. "Grab yourself a drink." "On me." The guard hesitated, clearly tempted. It only took a few seconds. Money talks. And when it speaks loud enough, even loyalty listens. The guard nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Dwayne didn't wait. He slipped through the door like a shadow and shut it behind him. Inside, a wall of screens flickered with real-time footage from every corner of the casino, tables, vaults, even the employee hallways. This was the eye of the storm, and what it saw could expose everything. He scanned the room quickly, finding a metal filing cabinet marked Incidents. Inside, thick folders stuffed with reports, accusations of cheating, confiscated winnings, blacklists, all targeting high-stakes winners. Dozens of names, dozens of stolen fortunes, all erased under the pretense of suspicious activity. And then he saw it, another file labeled Rigged Systems. Inside were blueprints of tampered roulette wheels, modified shuffling mechanisms, and instructions for using marked decks. They weren't just rigging the games, they were doing it. With government-level precision, Dwayne didn't take the files. He photographed everything with a hidden pen camera, quick, clean, undetectable. Then, before leaving, he placed a small wireless camera in the corner, angled just right to record the room's every future move. He wasn't just collecting proof. For tonight, He was setting a trap for tomorrow, but the night wasn't done yet. As he made his way out, Dwayne passed a hallway near the executive suites. He heard voices. One in particular made him freeze in place. Dwayne paused, staying in the shadows, listening. "Another big catch last night," Victor was saying, his tone smug and self-satisfied. "Cleaned him out good." "That's Statham." "No. Johnson, he didn't even see it coming." A second voice, lower, asked, "What about the staff?" Victor laughed. "They won't talk. They know better. And even if they do, who's gonna believe them over us?" Dwayne's jaw tightened. The rage inside him burned cold and focused. This wasn't just greed. It was arrogance, systemic corruption, hiding behind gold fixtures and custom suits. And now he had the receipts. He slipped out into the night unseen, heart pounding not from fear, but purpose. He reviewed the footage, scanned the images, double-checked every second of audio. He had it all, the proof, the motive, the voices, but exposing them wouldn't be enough. Not yet. To end this game, Dwayne had to face the man behind it, not in secret, not from the shadows, but in the spotlight, on his turf. And the only place powerful enough to do that was the casino's private poker room. This wasn't about cards anymore. It wasn't even about the money. This was about confrontation, about walking straight into the lion's den and daring the beast to flinch. And for that, Dwayne Johnson didn't need a disguise. He needed the truth, and the truth was already locked and loaded. That night, the private poker room buzzed with a different kind of energy. It was the heart of the casino's elite circle, a velvet-lined sanctuary where fortunes changed hands in whispers, where ego and wealth danced in elegant warfare. The lighting was soft, the decor intimidating, mahogany tables, gold inlays, crystal tumblers filled with top-shelf spirits. It wasn't a room, it was a throne room. And at the center, holding court like a smug king, sat Victor. He was surrounded by a circle of high rollers, the kind of people who never worried about rules because they owned the rule book. The game was in full swing when Dwayne walked in, tall, broad-shouldered and no longer hiding. The murmurs started immediately. Victor's eyes snapped up and narrowed. "Well, well," he said with a smirk that oozed fake charm. "If it isn't, our favorite troublemaker. Back for more." Dwayne didn't blink. He walked straight to the empty seat across from Victor and sat down like he belonged there. "I'm here to play," he said calmly, "unless you're too scared to lose." A ripple of surprise moved through the table. Someone laughed nervously. Another raised an eyebrow. The air shifted. Victor tried to brush it off with a chuckle, but there was an edge to it. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," he said, stacking his chips. "But this table isn't for amateurs." Dwayne smiled, not with amusement, but with intent. "Good thing I'm no amateur." The cards were dealt. And just like that, the game was on. Dwayne didn't come to win money. He came to win trust, if only long enough to rip the mask off Victor's empire. So he played with precision. He lost small hands on purpose, then won a few. Nothing flashy, just enough to blend in. Victor, as expected, played aggressively. He tried to dominate the table with reckless bets and smug confidence. But Dwayne stayed cool, calm, unshakable, and that was what got under Victor's skin. Then, midway through the game, Dwayne started talking. Not loud, but loud enough. "You run quite the operation here," he said casually, watching the dealer shuffle. "Must take a lot of skill to keep things fair." Victor froze for just a second. Then he chuckled. "People come here for the thrill. We make sure they get it." "Fair is an interesting word," Dwayne replied, letting the sentence hang. "Other..." Players looked up. The tension began to thicken, not from the game, but from the unspoken war that had just started. And then came the trap. Dwayne pushed all his chips forward on a hand that looked weak. It was a bold move, one meant to bait a predator. Victor took it. "All in," he declared, grinning. Dwayne nodded. The cards were revealed. Victor had a straight flush. He leaned back, triumphant. But Dwayne, he flipped his cards one by one. Royal. E-flush. The room erupted in gasps. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. And Victor, for the first time, his mask cracked. "You're cheating again," he shouted, slamming the table. The room fell silent. Dwayne stood slowly, his voice even. "Cheating? That's rich, coming from the man running the biggest scam in this entire building." Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small remote. One click, and screens mounted around the poker room lit up. Security footage, voice recordings, blueprints. Every dirty secret laid bare in front of the wealthiest eyes in the room. The silence broke into stunned murmurs. Players looked at each other, at Victor, at the evidence, and then the door burst open. Law enforcement, right on cue. Victor turned pale, and Dwayne, he didn't flinch. Because this wasn't the end of the game. This was the moment the house finally lost. The roar of chaos followed the silence like thunder after lightning. Victor's smug expression twisted into panic as law enforcement officers stormed the poker room, their presence cutting through the luxury like a blade through velvet. He tried to speak, to deny, to wave it all away with charm and bluster, but the footage kept rolling. The screens showed everything: rigged machines, tampered cards, staff caught red-handed cheating guests. Every secret he'd buried under glitter and gloss was now blazing in high definition for the whole room to see. Dwayne didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He just stood there, letting the truth speak for itself. Officers fanned out across the casino floor. The crowd of high rollers spilled out from the poker lounge, gathering as the reality set in. They weren't just witnesses to a scandal, they were victims of it. The ledgers found in the security room confirmed everything. Dozens of players, millions stolen. And Victor's voice, captured by Dwayne's hidden camera, was the final nail in the coffin. Another big catch last night. That Johnson guy didn't even see it coming, but he did. He saw it all. And now, so did everyone else. Victor lunged across the table, fury and desperation twisting his face. But before he could reach anyone, Dwayne intercepted him. One clean move, one powerful hold, and the man behind the scam was pinned against the very table he once ruled over. Victor's empire, built on fear and manipulation, collapsed with the clinking of handcuffs. "You're done," Dwayne growled. The officers pulled Victor away, reading him his rights as they dragged him out of the room. Patrons clapped. Some cheered. But many just stood in stunned silence, processing the scale of the betrayal they'd endured. The casino that once promised glamour and fortune had been nothing more than a gilded lie. Mia stood at the edge of the crowd, eyes wide, breath shaky. But when Dwayne looked her way, she nodded. Then, in front of everyone, she stepped forward. "He's telling the truth," she said firmly. "I've seen it all. I've worked here for 3 years. I watched them mark cards. I watched them accuse innocent people. They took your money and laughed about it." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. She found strength in the moment, in the justice unfolding around her. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Dwayne approached her, pulling a small thumb drive from his pocket. "The original files. Give this to the authorities. Make sure they have everything." She took it, holding it tightly like it was a torch being passed. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You did the right thing," Dwayne replied. The casino was no longer a sanctuary of wealth and fantasy. It had become a crime scene, one with flashing lights, questioning officers, and a reckoning long overdue. Players approached Dwayne. Some in tears, some with anger in their voices, others just in awe. One man, clutching a losing receipt, said, "I thought it was just me." "Thought? I was bad at the game." Dwayne looked him in the eye. "No, they played you, but not anymore." The authorities began organizing restitution. Patrons were told their losses would be reviewed and any stolen winnings recovered. The mood shifted from outrage to something more powerful. Hope. And in the center of it all stood Dwayne Johnson, not just as the man who beat the house, but as the one who exposed it for what it truly was. As Victor was dragged through the main floor in handcuffs, the sound of applause followed him, not out of admiration, but justice. The empire he had built, brick by brick, chip by chip, was now crumbling under the weight of truth. What once glimmered with luxury now pulsed with disbelief. The casino's pristine image had shattered, and beneath the marble, the crystal, the endless neon, it reeked of corruption. Law enforcement didn't waste time. They swept through the facility like a cleansing tide. Vaults were opened, offices raided, hard drives and ledgers were confiscated. Security rooms once guarded like Fort Knox were now evidence lockers. And those smiling employees, many now sat in back rooms, being questioned under fluorescent lights, their secrets peeling away one by one. But Dwayne Johnson didn't stay to watch it all unfold. That wasn't his style. He had done what he came to do. Still, as he turned to leave, he got sight of Mia, standing by the bar where this all began. Her eyes were wide, not with fear anymore, but something closer to peace, a calm earned through courage. Dwayne walked over, nodding. "You came through," he said simply. She smiled, still processing the weight of what they'd just done. "I couldn't stay quiet anymore. People needed to know." He reached into his pocket, handed her a second copy of the thumb drive. "Just in case. Give it to the press. Make it public. Let the world know how deep this went." Mia took it with both hands, clutching it like it was more than a device. It was a new beginning. "Thank you, Dwayne, for everything." He gave her a reassuring nod, then turned to face the floor one last time. The once proud patrons, now humbled and angry, started to approach him. Some offered their thanks, some shared stories, losses they'd chalked up to bad luck, nights they'd gone home ashamed. One middle-aged father held up a crumpled receipt, voice trembling. "I thought I lost everything because I was stupid. Turns out it was all rigged." Dwayne looked him straight in the eye. "You didn't lose because you were bad, you lost because they cheated, and they won't get away with it." Word spread quickly. Restitution was coming. Authorities announced they would use confiscated funds to begin repaying wronged players. The atmosphere, once charged with betrayal, now throbbed with a strange mix of vindication and relief. People started to believe again, and yet, through it all, Dwayne didn't seek the spotlight. He didn't stand on tables or take credit. He wasn't interested in fame. He was interested in fairness, and with that mission complete, he walked toward the exit, calm, silent, unshaken. The crowd noticed. Applause broke out again, not wild or frenzied, but deep and sincere. The kind of applause reserved for someone who had stood up when no one else would. He paused at the door, looked back once. The flashing lights, the chaos, the beginning of a new chapter. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply muttered to himself, low and satisfied, "Another good day's work." And then, like a shadow at sunset, he disappeared into the night. But what he left behind wasn't just a dismantled casino. It was a warning, a legacy, a reminder that in a world of illusions, sometimes one man with the truth is all it takes to bring the house down. What you just witnessed wasn't just a story about cards and casinos. It was a story about courage, about how one man, armed with nothing but truth and grit, stood up against a corrupt empire and gave a voice to the voiceless. And if that lit something in you, if you felt anger, hope, or even pride, then do something about it. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to believe that justice still matters. Drop a comment and tell us, what would you have done in Dwayne's place? And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story might just change everything. Together, let's make sure the good guys never walk alone.